I thought my wife Lauren simply forgot to add me to her company's holiday party list until I found the guest sheet with my name crossed out in thick red ink and a warning: do not admit under any circumstances. That's when everything snapped into focus. She wasn't careless, she was hiding a double life I was never meant to discover. What she didn't know was that her betrayal had just triggered the kind of revenge she could never see coming. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. For 28 years, Lauren and I had built what looked, from the outside, like the perfect marriage. She was the CEO of Meridian Technologies, a woman whose ambition and drive had always inspired me. I ran a small but successful accounting firm, content with my quieter life. Our friends called us the power couple, her sharp edges softened by my steady calm, my introversion balanced by her charisma. We hosted dinner parties, took vacations, and sent out holiday cards with matching sweaters. If you'd asked anyone, they'd say we were the kind of couple you'd envy. But if you looked closer, you'd see the cracks. Lauren's late. Nights at the office became more frequent. She started traveling for business on weekends, always with a plausible excuse. I should have seen it coming. The distance between us grew, not in arguments or slammed doors, but in the silence that settled over our home. She'd come in late, her perfume lingering in the hallway, her smile just a little too practiced. I told myself it was the stress of her job, the pressure of running a company in a cutthroat industry. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. The holiday season was always our time. We had traditions decorating the tree together, baking gingerbread, and exchanging small gifts on Christmas Eve. This year, though, Lauren seemed distracted. She barely glanced at the ornaments I'd unpacked, her mind somewhere else. When she mentioned the company's annual holiday party, she said it was just for employees this year. Nothing fancy. I nodded, not wanting to push. But that was the moment everything changed. A week later, I overheard her on the phone, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Of course he won't be there," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "He's not on the list. They underestimated me." I decided to surprise her at the party, thinking I could remind her of what we used to have. I put on my best suit, grabbed a bottle of her favorite wine, and drove downtown. The Meridian building was lit up like a jewel, laughter and music spilling out onto the street. I felt a pang of hope, maybe. This was the night we'd find our way back to each other. But as I approached the entrance, the security guard, someone I'd met at previous events, stopped me. "Sorry, sir, you're not on the list." I smiled, thinking it was a mistake. "I'm Lauren's husband." He checked the clipboard, then looked up, his expression shifting. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hutchkins. You're banned. HR's orders." The words hit me like a slap. Banned and not forgotten, not overlooked, banned. The look on his face was priceless, a mix of pity and discomfort, as if he knew more than he could say. I stood there, the cold December, air biting through my coat, watching as my wife's colleagues filed past me, laughing and clinking glasses. That was the moment I realized I had nothing left to lose. What would you do if you were banned from your own spouse's life? I didn't go home that night. Instead, I sat in my car across the street from the Meridian building, watching the party through the frosted windows. The city lights blurred with the sting in my eyes. I replayed every conversation, every late night, every time Lauren had brushed me off with a tired smile. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, but I'd chosen comfort over confrontation. That was my first mistake. My phone buzzed around 10 p.m. It was Lauren. "Hey, I'll be home late. The party's running long. Don't wait up." Her voice was light, almost cheerful. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the call button. I wanted to ask her why I was banned, why she'd lied, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I watched as she stepped out onto the balcony with a group of executives, her laughter rising above the music. She looked radiant, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Frank Sterling, her company's vice president. I'd met him a handful of times, always polite, always just a little too familiar with Lauren. Tonight, he stood close, his hand resting on the small of her back. The way she leaned into him, the way their eyes met, it was all the confirmation I needed. My heart pounded in my chest, a sickening mix of anger and humiliation. This wasn't just a family drama. It was a full-blown betrayal story unfolding in real time. I watched as they disappeared inside, the curtains closing behind them. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I had to know the truth. I couldn't keep living in the dark, pretending everything was fine. That was the moment everything changed. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through Lauren's social media. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the usual photos of board meetings, charity events, and carefully curated holiday cheer. But then I noticed something odd. In every group photo from the office, Frank was always by her side. Sometimes their hands touched, sometimes their smiles lingered a little too long, breadcrumbs scattered for anyone willing to look. I remembered the guest list. If HR had banned me, there had to be a record. I called a friend who worked in Meridian's IT department, someone who owed me a favor. "Can you check the party list for me?" I asked, my voice low. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Gerald, your name was on the original list. It was removed 2 days ago. HR said it was a personal request from the CEO." The words echoed in my mind. Lauren had made sure I wouldn't be there. She'd erased me from her public life, just as she'd started erasing me from her private one. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a party. It was about being replaced, about being written out of my own marriage. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. I sat in the darkness, the city's holiday lights mocking me, and made a decision. If Lauren wanted me out of her life, she'd have to face the truth about what she'd done. They underestimated me. I was going to find out just how far this betrayal went, and I was going to make sure karma struck back. What secrets would you uncover if you started digging into your partner's life? I barely slept that night. The house felt colder, emptier, as if Lauren's absence had finally seeped into the walls. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched bottle of wine I'd brought for the party, the label fogged with condensation. My mind raced with questions, each one sharper than the last. How long had this been going on? Was I the only one who didn't know? I should have seen it coming. The late nights, the secretive texts, the way she'd started locking her phone. I'd chalked it up to work stress, to the pressures of being a CEO, but now, every excuse felt like another brick in the wall she'd built between us. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to confront Lauren, not yet. I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. Years of managing finances and reading between the lines had taught me that the truth always leaves a trail. I decided to start with the basics. I logged into our shared bank account, scanning for anything unusual. At first, it was the usual groceries, gas, the occasional online order. But then I noticed a series of charges at upscale restaurants, places we'd never been together. Dinners for two, always on nights she claimed to be working late. My stomach twisted. That was the moment everything changed. I printed out the statements, highlighting every suspicious charge. Next, I checked our credit card activity. More of the same hotel bookings, spa treatments, gifts from luxury boutiques, all carefully timed around her business trips. The evidence was piling up. Each transaction another crack in the story she'd told me. I had nothing left to lose. If Lauren was going to betray me, I was going to make sure she couldn't hide behind lies. I started keeping a journal, documenting every detail, her comings and goings, the calls she made, the excuses she gave. I even set up a small camera in the living room, just in case. It felt wrong, invasive, but I reminded myself this was about survival, about justice, about not letting a toxic family betrayal define the rest of my life. That evening, Lauren came home, her face flushed from the party. She barely looked at me as she hung up her coat. "Long night?" I asked, my voice steady. She nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Just tired. I'm going to bed." I watched her disappear down the hallway, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the Christmas lights. I realized then that the woman I'd loved for nearly 3 decades was already gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. What would you do if the person you trusted most became a stranger overnight? The next week, I became a detective in my own home. Every morning, Lauren left before sunrise, her perfume lingering in the hallway, long after the door closed. I waited until her car disappeared down the street before I started my search. I combed through drawers, checked her home office, and scrolled through the family computer. Years of accounting had trained me to spot inconsistencies, and now every detail mattered. I should have seen it coming the way she'd started using. A new email address, the sudden password changes, the locked briefcase she kept in the closet. One afternoon, I found a receipt tucked between the pages of a business magazine on her desk. It was for a weekend at the Harborview Hotel, a place we'd never stayed. The date matched one of her out-of-town conferences. My hands shook as I snapped a photo of the receipt. Breadcrumbs, I thought. She was careless, or maybe she thought I'd never look. That was her mistake. I started reaching out to people at Meridian, careful not to raise suspicion. I called an old friend in HR, someone who owed me a favor from years back. Off the record, I said. Has Lauren been spending a lot of time with Frank Sterling? There was a pause, then a quiet sigh. They're close, everyone's noticed, but nobody wants to get involved. The words stung, but they confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't just a family drama, it was a full-blown betrayal story, and I was the last to know. I dug deeper, searching for anything that would tie Lauren and Frank together outside of work. Social media was a goldmine. Photos from company retreats, always with the two of them side by side. Comments from colleagues. Inside jokes I didn't understand. I even found a private Instagram account linked to Frank, filled with photos of dinners, sunsets, and hotel lobbies that matched the receipts I'd found. In one picture, Lauren's scarf was draped over a chair, the same one I'd given her for our anniversary. The more I uncovered, the more the pieces fit together. Lauren wasn't just having an affair, she was building a new life, one that didn't include me. I had nothing left to lose. I printed everything, organized it into a folder, and hid it in my office. Every detail, every lie, every moment of broken trust was now documented. I was ready for whatever came next. What would you do if you held all the evidence of your own betrayal in your hands? By the time the first snow fell, I had everything I needed. The folder in my desk was thick with evidence receipts, photos, emails, and a timeline that mapped out every lie Lauren had told. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind that comes when you've accepted the truth, no matter how ugly. They underestimated me. Lauren and Frank thought I'd stay in the dark, that I'd keep playing the role of the oblivious husband. But I was done being the family scapegoat in my own marriage. I started planning my next move. Revenge wasn't about anger, it was about justice served. I wanted Lauren to see the consequences of her choices, to feel the weight of the betrayal she'd so carefully orchestrated. I reached out to a lawyer, David Morrison, a man I trusted with my life savings. I laid out the evidence, every detail of the toxic family drama that had unfolded behind my back. David's eyes widened as he flipped through the folder. Gerald, this is more than enough. You're not just dealing with infidelity. There's financial manipulation here too. We discussed strategy. David explained that in cases of marital betrayal, especially when there's proof of financial abuse and property theft, the courts take a dim view. You've been funding her double life, he said, pointing to the credit card statements. That's grounds for a strong case. The words gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt in months. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting, I was taking control. I decided to set a final trap. I invited Lauren to dinner at our favorite restaurant, the one where we'd celebrated anniversaries and birthdays. She accepted, her voice as smooth as ever. It'll be nice to have a night out, she said, not knowing what I had planned. I reserved a quiet table in the back, away from prying eyes. I wanted her to feel safe, to let her guard down. That evening, as we sat across from each other, I watched her carefully. She talked about work, about the company's holiday party, about how busy things had been. I nodded, playing my part. I waited until dessert before I slid the folder across the table. "What's this?" she asked, her smile faltering. "Open it," I said quietly. She flipped through the pages, her face draining of color with each new piece of evidence. The look on her face was priceless, a mix of shock, fear, and something else, the realization that her secrets were no longer safe. I leaned in, my voice steady. "We need to talk, Lauren, about everything. What happens when the mask finally comes off and the truth is laid bare?" Lauren's hands trembled as she turned the pages, her eyes darting from receipt to photograph to the timeline I'd so meticulously assembled. For a moment, she tried to compose herself, but the mask she'd worn for so long was slipping. The restaurant's soft lighting cast shadows across her face, making her look older, almost unfamiliar. I watched her, waiting for the lies, the excuses, the practiced CEO composure, but all she managed was a whisper. "How long have you known?" I met her gaze, steady and unflinching, long enough to see who you really are. My voice was calm, but inside, my heart hammered with a mix of grief and grim satisfaction. "You didn't just betray me, Lauren. You betrayed our marriage, our home, everything we built together. And you did it with the kind of calculation I never thought possible from someone I loved." She tried to recover, straightening her shoulders, her tone shifting to the cold professionalism she used in boardrooms. "Gerald, you don't understand." But I cut her off. "No, Lauren, I understand perfectly. You made me the scapegoat for your unhappiness. You used our money to fund your affair. You even had me banned from your company's holiday party so you could parade your new life without me in the way. That's not just a family betrayal. That's cruelty." The table between us felt like a chasm. She looked away, her jaw tight. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she muttered. "Frank and I shook my head. "Frank and you can have each other. But you're going to face the consequences. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I have every transaction, every message, every lie documented. This isn't just about divorce, Lauren. This is about justice served." For a moment, she was silent, her confidence crumbling. The restaurant's hum faded into the background as we sat in the eye of our own private storm. I could see the realization dawning in her eyes. She'd underestimated me. She thought I'd go quietly, that I'd accept my role as the discarded husband. But I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by standing up for myself. As I stood to leave, I looked back one last time. "You always said I was too passive, too trusting. Maybe you were right. But tonight, you'll remember that I was the one who finally saw through you." I walked out into the cold night, the weight of broken trust replaced by a strange, liberating clarity. What happens when the fallout from betrayal ripples through every part of your life? The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, tense phone calls, and icy silences at home. Lauren tried to keep up appearances, but the air between us was thick with everything left unsaid. She moved through the house like a stranger, her footsteps careful, her words measured. I should have seen it coming, the way she avoided my eyes, the way she packed her things in small, secretive trips. The family drama that had once simmered beneath the surface was now boiling over, impossible to ignore. David, my lawyer, wasted no time. He filed the divorce papers, attaching every piece of evidence I'd collected. The case was airtight: financial manipulation, marital betrayal, and a clear pattern of deceit. Lauren's attorney called, trying to negotiate, but I stood firm. "We're not sweeping this under the rug," I told David. "She needs to face what she's done." For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, a sense that karma was finally striking back. Word spread quickly through our circle of friends and family. Some reached out with awkward sympathy, others with quiet support, but some sided with Lauren, convinced by her carefully crafted narrative. "He was always distant," I overheard her tell her sister on the phone. "He never understood me." It stung, but I refused to let her rewrite the story. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't afraid to let it be known. At Meridian Technologies, the fallout was even more dramatic. The board launched an internal review after an anonymous tip, one that included evidence of Lauren's misuse of company funds and her relationship with Frank. The company's HR department called me in for a statement. I laid out the facts, careful and precise, just as I'd done in my accounting practice. The look on their faces was priceless. They'd trusted Lauren, believed in her leadership, but now they saw the cracks in her perfect facade. Frank was quietly let go. his contract terminated by mutual agreement. Lauren was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. The entitled family member who had once ruled the boardroom was now facing the consequences of her own actions. Justice was being served, not just in our marriage, but in every corner of her carefully constructed world. But the real fallout was at home. The silence between us was no longer peaceful, it was suffocating. I realized that the life I'd been fighting to save was already gone, replaced by something hollow and unfamiliar. That was the moment everything changed for good. What does healing look like after the storm of betrayal and revenge? 6 months later, the house was quiet in a way that finally felt peaceful. The divorce was finalized, the assets divided, and Lauren had moved out for good. I kept the home we'd built together, but it no longer felt like a museum of broken trust. Instead, it was a place where I could start over, free from the weight of secrets and lies. I'd learned that sometimes justice served doesn't look like revenge, it looks like reclaiming your own life. The family drama had left scars, but it also taught me what I was truly capable of. I'd faced down a narcissistic family betrayal, exposed the truth, and refused to be the scapegoat any longer. There were days when the loneliness crept in, when I missed the comfort of routine, but I reminded myself I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I started reconnecting with old friends, picking up hobbies I'd abandoned, and even found the courage to travel alone for the first time in years. The world felt bigger, brighter, and full of possibility. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun set, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Heard about Lauren. You did the right thing." I smiled, feeling a sense of closure I never thought possible. The look on Lauren's face when she realized she couldn't control the narrative anymore, that was something I'd never forget. They underestimated me, but I'd found my strength in the ashes of betrayal. If you've ever been through a family betrayal, if you've ever felt the sting of broken trust or the weight of a toxic family secret, know this: you're not alone. Healing takes time, but it's possible. Sometimes karma strikes back in ways you never expect. And sometimes the best revenge story is simply living well and refusing to let the past define you. Thank you for watching my story. If you found this journey powerful, please like and subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever faced a betrayal like this. Your stories matter, they help others find hope and strength.